week one of the fantasy football season, and he has tight ends start to sit every matchup of the week. The first matchup, the Detroit Lions at the Chiefs to kick off the season here. So Sam Laporta, big rookie, obviously coming out of college football last season, but I'm not going to trust him here in week one, even though as the season goes on, I think he could be a big part of this Lion offense. But coming into the season, he was ranked below the top 12 in fantasy football at the tight end position. Here in week one, had a Chief team that just came off the Super Bowl, obviously, and the crowd's going to be crazy over there in Arrowhead. I just can't trust him as a start this week. I'll have him as a sit. Travis Kelce, he was the top tight end, obviously drafted in fantasy football on a first-round pick, and you start him each and every week, no doubt about it. Now to the Bengals at the Browns, Irv Smith Jr., I think he could be a sleeper candidate this season and a breakout with this Bengal team if he could stay healthy, and health has always been an issue when he's been a tight end that's really hasn't been drafted at all in fantasy football. So even in a good offense where defenses won't pay attention to him this season here, I just have him as a sit this week. David Njoku, I think he could put up top 10, top 12 fantasy numbers this season at the tight end position. Last season was a pretty solid year for Njoku, but the only thing I got to worry about, obviously, is they added Elijah Moore trade with the New York Jets. So that might be less targets here for Njoku. And him and Deshaun Watson weren't really on the same page last season. So hopefully with a full training camp and Watson back focused, Njoku could be solid at the tight end position. But this week, I still have him as a start because I could see this ball game being a one where they're trailing and have to throw a lot. Now, Houston Texans at the Ravens. Dalton Schultz, he was a great Dallas Cowboy the last couple seasons, and he was a good fantasy contributor. But right here in Houston, I think it's going to be a little bit different, and defenses are going to pay more attention here to Dalton Schultz, because in Dallas over there, they had to worry about CeeDee Lamb, they had to worry about Zeke and Pollard out of the backfield. But right here for this Houston Texan team, he might have been a product of the system as well, where that Cowboy offense was tight end friendly for many seasons. But right here going into week one in the tough Baltimore D, I got Schultz as a borderline option. He was a tight end drafted probably 14th, 15th overall at the position. Now to the Ravens, Mark Andrews, he's a top 2 tight end pretty much every season, obviously. And this week here in a good matchup with the Texans coming to towns, I think Mark Andrews has a big ball game, and he's a must start this week. Now to the Tampa Bay Bucks at the Minnesota Vikings. Cade Otton in his rookie season last year showed some flashes, but this week here at the Minnesota Vikings, I don't see much out of him. Baker Mayfield, he was never really good with a tight end over the last few seasons where he could feed a guy, and I just can't trust many guys on this Buck team with Baker Mayfield, who we've seen struggle throughout his NFL career for the most part. And this week here, even though I know it's a game where they could be trailing early and often and have to throw a lot, Cade Otton's still not a player I'm going to have confidence in at the position and sit. TJ Hawkinson, he was a top 3-4 tight end drafted this season in fantasy football, and he put up monster numbers last season, no doubt about it. And this week here with one-on-one coverage and work in the middle of the field, he's a must-start tight end, no doubt about it. Now to the Panthers at the Atlanta Falcons. Hayden Hurst will be the starter this season for this Carolina Panther team, but I think he's going to be inconsistent. I know he's versus one of his former teams here at the Atlanta Falcons, but with Bryce Young at quarterback, there's going to be some growing pains, and I just can't trust Hayden Hurst coming into this ball game. See, he's a sit for me. Kyle Pitts now entering season 3. It's put up with shut-up time, I believe, here for Kyle Pitts. I know the quarterback play's been poor over the last couple seasons, with Marcus Mariota the starter last year for the Falcons. But Kyle Pitts, he was a highly touted and drafted rookie a few years ago for this Atlanta Falcon team. He could line up on the outside. He's a matchup nightmare, and there's no excuses. He should go out there and have a good season if he stays healthy this year. And right now, versus a pretty weak Panther defense, I think he could take advantage of it. And I have him as a start this week. Now to the Cardinals at the Washington Commanders. There's not much to say over here about this game. Trey McBride and Zach Ertz, they'll probably be splitting, obviously, the snaps here. Both guys that obviously the Cardinals like, but Joshua Dobbs, a quarterback, he's still an unknown in a little bit, even though he's been in the league for a number amount of seasons here, Dobbs. But he's not a guy I'm going to trust to get to the ball to these players here early and often. And they're both sits for me. Logan Thomas, he's a sit for me easily this week here. I know Thomas put up numbers a few seasons ago, but health has always been an issue here with Logan Thomas. And once again, he's questionable coming into this ball game. And he's an easy sit, and I don't know if Sam Howell could get the ball to his playmakers consistently. Now to the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Indianapolis Colts. Evan Ingram, he's a start for me. Last season was a breakout year. He got the franchise tag. And Trevor Lawrence, he has some offense over there in Jacksonville surrounding him. Obviously with Evan Ingram, Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley, a huge addition in my opinion this offseason. I think Ingram could take advantage of the middle of the field here, where defense is going to have to pay attention to Ridley and Christian Kirk more than Ingram. And I got him as a start this week. Now Mo Alley-Cox, we've seen some flashes from him throughout his career, but he's not a tight end you're going to have confidence in. So he's a sit this week. Now to the Niners. Pittsburgh Steelers, George Kittle, I think his best seasons are behind him. And last year, a lot of touchdowns bailed him out last year for putting up fantasy points. But in this game versus a tough Steelers defense, I think Kittle could put up decent numbers. I'm not saying he's going to put up huge numbers, but I still got him as a start. And he was drafted in the 5th, 6th round of most fantasy drafts. He was George Kittle. So right now, I got him as a start. Pat Fairmouth last season, he received over 700 yards. And for a young quarterback, tight end is the security blanket and their best friend, so Fairmouth, I have as a start this week. He was drafted usually 7th, 8th tight end off the board in fantasy week. So this week here, I have him as a start now. To the Tennessee Titans at the New Orleans Saints, Chiga Kongwo, I have as a borderline option. Last season, towards the end of the year, Kongwo, he was pretty decent for this Tennessee Titan team. But going into the year, I don't know what we're going to get out of Ryan Tannehill. I think Will Levis by midseason could be a starter for this team if they struggle. And Okongwu, he is a matchup nightmare for linebackers and safeties with his size and speed at the tight end position. But I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit. And I got him borderline this week now. Juwan Johnson, he's the man over there. Once again, last season he scored a lot of touchdowns with Andy Dalton and Taysom Hill as the quarterback. But now with Derek Carr at the quarterback, we'll see if Juwan Johnson could be decent this season. But right now, week 1, I'm going to have him as a sit because, like I said, tight end's a pretty deep position going into the year. But if Juwan Johnson did end up as a top 12, top 15 tight end when it's all said and done this season, it wouldn't be surprising to me. But going into week 1, I'll just have him as a sit. Now to the Raiders at the Denver Broncos, Michael Mayer, he's a rookie. And this Raider team, we're going to see how their offense is going to be made up now with Jimmy Garoppolo. I know George Kittle was a favorite target and a nice security blanket for Jimmy G over there for the San Francisco 49ers. But Michael Mayer is obviously a rookie. We'll see what he can do for this Vegas Raider team. But here in week 1, I don't see him doing much. And we know this Bronco defense is a pretty solid unit, especially here at home over there. Mile high now to Greg Dulcich. Last season was a good rookie year for him in the games he played. I know he missed the beginning of the season, was Greg Dulcich. But right now, going into week 1, I'm going to have him as a sit. I think the Broncos, they're going to run the football a lot in this ball game. And Greg Dulcich, yes, he was a top 12, top 15 tight end drafted in most fantasy leagues. But right here, going into week 1, I'm going to have him as a sit. Now to the Eagles at the Patriots, Dallas Goedert. I like Dallas Goedert a lot. It's not talked about enough, I think, in this Eagle offense. He's got a nose for the end zone. He can work the middle of the field. He's got great speed. And the attention's obviously going to go to A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith a lot in this offense. But Jalen Hurts, him and Goddard have a good rapport. I know it's a pretty tough matchup at the Patriots, who always play good defense at home for the most part. But I think Goddard, each and every week, you just put him out there in your starting lineup and expect good numbers. Now to the Patriots, Hunter Henry, he hasn't been a factor over the last few seasons, and I don't think he's going to be a factor here in week 1 for this New England Patriot team. So Hunter Henry, I have him as a sit this week. And this Patriot offense, there's not much on it this season. So I have him as a sit. Now to the Rams at the Seattle Seahawks, Tyler Bigbie, he's had some big games throughout his career, but he's been an inconsistent tight end as well. And right now, there's not much over there for this Ram team going into week 1. Most likely, Cooper Kupp's going to be out. And defense, Higbee's the next best playmaker, I believe. Option for me. He's another tight end in that 12 to 15 range drafted in most fantasy leagues. But like I said, the Seattle defense, they're going to zero in on him because he's the next big target in this offense. And with Kupp out, all that attention, I think, will go to Higbee. And he's borderline at best. Noah Fant, I know he was good a few seasons ago with the Broncos, but it just didn't work out over there for the Seahawks with him last season. And now he's the 4th or 5th option on this offense, especially them drafting ANS was the Seattle Seahawks team. That's more targets taken away here from Noah Fant in my opinion. And Geno Smith, he was not really a fan of the tight end over the last couple seasons. So he's a sit for me now to the Dolphins. At the Los Angeles Chargers, Durham Smythe, he's had some games throughout his NFL career where he's found the end zone. But right here, too, he just targets Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill all day, and rightfully so, and that's going to be more of that this season. So Durham Smythe, he's a sit for me. And now to the Los Angeles Chargers, I like Gerald Everett over the last couple seasons, and he's going to be a guy that defenses are going to forget about. Obviously, when you got a Keenan Allen, a Mike Williams, and the first-round pick, Quentin Johnson, where defense has got to pay attention to. Gerald Everett, he can roam the field in the middle. He's going to make some plays. And this week, I think he's a top 12 tight end, and I have him as a start this week. Now to the Packers, at the Chicago Bears, Luke Musgrave, he's going to be a sit for me. But as the season goes on, I think Musgrave could be a player that could put up numbers. And this is a new era for the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love's the starting quarterback. Got the young receivers, obviously, in Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson at the wide receiver position, where those guys got speed and can make some plays. And I think Musgrave could be part of that nucleus and be a fantasy option down the line. But right here, going into week one, in a tough environment over there in Soldier Field, I have him as a sit. And now for Cole Kmet, he's a borderline option for me. I know last season, him and Fields towards the end of the year had a pretty good rapport at the tight end quarterback position, but now with DJ Moore over there in town for this Bear team, it's going to take a little bit targets away, in my opinion, here from Cole Kmet. But I still think Kmet could have a decent season once again. But I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit for him in week one and have him borderline. Now to the Dallas Cowboys, at the New York Giants, Jake Ferguson, he's going to be the starter for this Cowboy team. We know over the last few years, Dalton Schultz, he was a solid tight end option. And for this Dallas Cowboy team, a good tight end that can make plays and find the end zone. But right here in week one versus the Giants, I'm not going to go out there and throw Ferguson into my lineup. He's definitely a player to keep an eye on as the season goes on. And where this Cowboy team has had the tight end be a nice vocal point of the offense. But here in week one, he's a sit. And now for the Giants, they got their new man, Darren Waller, at the tight end position, making a deal with the Vegas Raiders in the offseason. And Darren Waller, if he stays healthy, we know he's a top 3, top 5 tight end that could put up points and make plays. And he's a matchup nightmare for linebackers and safeties. So right here in week one with his new team, he's going to be amped up. He's going to try to prove people wrong. And I got him as a start this week, obviously. And now to the Monday night and final game of the week. The Buffalo Bills at the New York Jets. At Dalton Kincaid, big college career, first-round pick from this Buffalo Bill team, but he's not a tight end I'm going to throw out there in the fire in week one versus a good Jet defense here. So I think Kincaid isn't going to do much in this ball game, and him and Dawson Knox are going to be splitting snaps anyway, in my opinion. So right here, Kincaid I have as a sit, Dawson Knox I have as a sit, but as the season goes on, Kincaid's definitely a tight end I think could break out and be a sleeper option. But right now, in a tough matchup, his career game, obviously, he's a sit for me. And now to the Jets side of things, Tyler Conklin. We saw some flashes last season for Conklin. But right now, in a tough matchup versus the Buffalo Bills here, and with Aaron Rodgers, him and Gary Wilson being on the same page, but not him and Conklin really. I don't trust Conklin as a tight end that could go out there week in and week out and put on big numbers. So right now, he's a sit for me. So that's week one, tight end starter sit at every matchup entering the fantasy football season.